Hey everybody, Alex here, and welcome to the month in review. This is getting hard, to say the least. Filming this really early. I think it's about I don't know, like 6:45, something like that. And man, I gotta repaint that pipe. Anyway, so hi. Um, when I say this has been difficult, it's primarily just because we're going through yet another big change at the office, and this time it actually affects me. Not in a bad way. I actually am getting a promotion. Didn't really ask for it or want it. But in the process of all that, it's basically a whole company wide shift. So it's not just me, it's like 500 people. So it's been a little hectic to say the least. So even when it does come time for me to play games and the like, I'm just kind of like, I just don't want to. Just it's just a lot. The good news out of the whole thing, is before all this, I did manage to finish Cold Steel 4. So I'm just going to touch on that briefly because I already made a specific video for that. In that video, I did say I don't know if I could necessarily go through a whole series start to finish again in less than a year. As fun as it is and was, it's a little taxing at a certain point because you're getting into one particular gameplay style for several months, and trying to go into something else, I'll be honest, even like a genre I'm totally used to, was hard. Basically because I'm getting old. But here's the thing, though. I kind of want to do something like that again. It was really fun. I don't know what. Because the only other time I could potentially think of when I did something similar to this is when I replayed Metal Gear Solid 1 through. I think I went through 1 through 3 in quick succession. And this was after 4 had come out. So I think I took my time in going into 4. And I also did it with Persona 3, and I went right into Persona 4. And that was PS2 versions. And I think there was one other one. I can't remember. But, doing this with Cold Steel and basically just pacing it out so I pretty much finished one a quarter worked. I originally didn't think I was going to finish the fourth one until the end of the year, but I had some extra time. My hand's work was going slow yet crazy, and now it's crazy and wacky, so the timing was absolutely perfect. But now I'm playing No More Heroes 1 on the Switch, and as of this recording, which I think is July the 27th, 28th, I'm almost done with it. I was on rank 2. Now I'm going on to do the rank 1 fight. I basically grinded out all the money I needed so I could just go right into that fight. And honestly, the game aged pretty well. Coming off the Wii, and the controls they translate into the Switch pretty well too. I'd actually never finished this. This is the furthest I've gotten in it since back in the day. But this also raises another question for me personally. And this is me just playing it and just thinking about it. I'm a huge fan of Grasshopper Manufacturer. They've been around for a while doing so many different things. Suda51 to me is probably one of the most, not the best, but one of the most fun game creators out there, just because he doesn't take it too seriously. He knows his strengths and his weaknesses, and he just rolls with them, and he basically uses them to his advantage when it comes to his gameplay style. People will say, "Oh, the games are janky and blah blah blah." That's part of it. Like he knows that. If it was a well polished game, I think people would be upset. But here's the thing with it. I'm playing through it, and you definitely feel the age. There's an open world thing, but there's really nothing in it. Even less than Deadly Premonition by comparison. And I'm cool with that. There's still pointless driving around to missions and all that nonsense, which is a product of the time. But it really made me wonder. It's like, okay, so I think Suda51 is a phenomenal game developer. I think Shigeru Miyamoto is a phenomenal game developer. Both of these guys are really old, right? So are they going to technically be considered old school? Who the hell starts randomly texting you at fucking 6 in the morning? Other than people who know I'm awake. Anyway, let me put this face down. So, when I say old school, I mean, is it going to be looked at, or is his games, and Miyamoto's a little bit different because I think since the characters are still contemporary, Mario and all that stuff. But, it's like, oh, look, the classic game genres of the Wii from the studio Grasshopper manufacturer. Like a Criterion collection of janky ass games. I don't know. Like, it really made me think, like, do modern gamers know or recognize Suda 51 the same way I do and a bunch of fans do? Knowing that, we'll use the Silver Case, for example. People go, oh, the Silver Case, that's like a retro game from Suda 51. And then, that's the end of it. Not, oh, Suda 51, I love No More Heroes. I love Lollipop Chainsaw. Oh my god, Shadows of the Damned was like one of the best games ever, despite all the penis jokes. And can you believe EA actually picked up a Suda 51 Grasshopper manufacturer game to publish it? That's insane. That never happens. I don't think these conversations actually happen. And maybe that's because I'm old and all this stuff has happened. And considering most of his games are on platforms that just don't really, what's the word I want to use, continue or have available access to them. I mean, Miyamoto's games, for instance, all the Marios and the Zeldas, arguably larger. Nintendo has emulated and republished and blah, 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 blah them to hell and back, knowing they could make money. Now, Suda, his stuff is not going to make that much money by comparison, of course. But I think people should actually have access to this stuff. And you could go, oh, you're going on about the preservation thing again. It's not so much it is the preservation, but it's not so much that. I just think, like, wow, like, if there wasn't a re-release of No More Heroes, or a HD remaster, or whatever the hell you want to call it, your options are the Wii and the PS3. Now you have a third one coming out, and some people will have no context. And now you're like, okay, let's re-release it on the Switch. Wonderful, beautiful, but people still don't have access to the original way it was meant to be played, unless it's on the Switch, in which case you use the stupidity. Don't use the stupidity. Use the fucking controller. But, people are going to go, oh, wow, this was a great game. It's really, there's really no, I guess you could say, primer into the whole thing. Because people are like, oh my god, No More Heroes is one of the greatest games of all time. Wow, this game is janky as shit. Not realizing that's part of it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like watching, we'll say, like a Quentin Tarantino movie. You have to be in a certain mindset to actually watch it. If you just go in like, I just want to chillax after having never seen anything, at least for me, you may as well just be throwing balls in my head, because it's not gonna register anything. And even then, like I rewatched Mallrats the other day, and that movie aged pretty well in terms of the comedy, as juvenile as a bunch of it is. But people think of Kevin Smith, and what do you think they think of him now? Some people think of him as a comic writer, and right now a lot of people are going to think of him as the guy who ruined He-Man. And, I watched that show, the Netflix series, The New Masters of the Universe, and I guess it's really no spoiler, at least from what I remember, because I'm trying to think of this off the top of my head. He-Man's name is not in the title, so I wasn't really surprised. Plus, one of my friends who works in animation got the skinny because he did some work on the show, and he told me, you may or may not be upset, just to warn you. Honestly, I thought it was pretty good, as long as you go in there thinking this is not He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It's very different, and, at the same time, it really brings up an idea of, if you're going to remake something for a new generation, you still got my generation who grew up with this stuff kicking around, and ultimately we just want the same shit redone, and then we're going to bitch and moan that nothing propelled it forward. And it's such a fucking fine line. And, Kevin Smith, like, he's obviously known just for, like, I think comic book writing at this point, and obviously his filmography. But I was kind of surprised, not surprised, but I was like, okay, let's be honest here. And I think he said this in an interview. Do you honestly think Mattel would have hired me to do this show if I was just going to fucking break it? knowing that they may be able to make money off of toy sales to my generation following that, maybe the younger kids. No, it's all calculated. And, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Netflix who decided to cut the series in half. Because it's 5 episodes, and episode 5 does not end in a good place. And I really don't mean like a cliffhanger or anything like that. It kind of just cuts itself off, It's like, and that, and then just goes. And, it's. I cursed. I was like, you motherfuckers, this wasn't even a good spot to kill it. Or a good spot to end it. Like, it wasn't even a cliffhanger. It was just. You may as well have just started rolling the credits and then just killed the feed. It was like that abrupt. But therein is the rub. A bunch of people are going to go, oh wow, like this is great and wonderful. They're going to go back and watch the original He-Man, not knowing contextually that show was really made for the purpose of selling toys. Like it's not Shakespeare of animation. Just like Suda 51 is not the Shakespeare of video games. It's a time and place, pop culture, poking fun at things sort of thing. And a lot of folks these days may not get that context, and when they eventually get the context or have the ability to play it, they're just not going to like it because it doesn't make any sense to them, or they find it offensive because, I'll be honest, there are a few things in this game that, given the way the world is today, would they fly? Sure. Would they be well received? Probably not. Just like how I say if they redid The Office, so many of those jokes with Oscar would probably have to go. It hits in a different place these days. But, if anything, I think No More Heroes is a really good palate cleanser. The camera, that's the other part, too. It's like, as much as they fix up the graphics a bit to make it run on modern platforms, they also leave a bunch of stuff in place. And Suda's camera work ain't that great. So, man, when you leave it in place, oof. Some of the fights when you're in close quarters are really, really annoying. What can you do? I'm having fun with it. But, going back to Cold Steel, it is definitely something, I think if I was to redo this with another series, like kind of just go through them sequentially, I was actually thinking about Shining Force, because I've never played them, ever. And I have 1, I have 2, and then I have all 3 scenarios with the fan translations, and I don't think that project will ever be finished, honestly, because it seems like they put out an update to it every 6 or 7 months. I mean, it's a free project. These guys are just doing it on their own time. But they've been doing it for like 10 years. So I think that's something I may look into. I could potentially do it with Shadow Hearts. I don't know if I'm really in the mood for another, we'll say, janky, not janky, another, PS2 era style game yet, but I'm kind of leaning on something Saturn related because I actually had a small snafu with my Saturn this past month too. So a bunch of you guys know I have a mode, which is a brilliant piece of hardware. So normally it's full timing in my Dreamcast, or the second Dreamcast I have because I didn't want to gut my childhood one to do it. And I already had Saturn games on the SSD for the day I eventually decided, let me put it in the Saturn. And I decided, hey, what day better than today? So I thought, let's go do that. So I went through the whole walkthrough. And the Saturn piece, for those of you who may not know or maybe are interested in this whole thing, the mode works with the Saturn right out the gate, not a problem. But depending on your model, depending on how your motherboard is hanging in there, it may or may not be able to provide enough power for the SSD or hard drive you're using. I think for the most part, bibbity boppity, the cards are okay. The SD cards, I think, work fine. But if you're using a solid state hard drive like I am, or something along those lines, it may need some extra juice. So it comes with a little cable that you literally plug into the power supply, and then you're good to go. So do that, not a problem. Playing some games, try to play Ovid Odyssey, and I get this weird, like, staticky sound in the background. Hear everything else, but there's a weird staticky sound. I'm thinking, oh fuck, here we go. You set up something, it's a brilliant piece of hardware, it takes you 10 minutes to set it up, and then you spend 10 fucking days trying to troubleshoot it. So go on the internet, of course, do some research, come to find out that if you have buzzing sound with the mode, you may need to use the extra juice option. And if that doesn't work, that means your power supply is also on its way out. Wonderful. So now I have to replace the power supply. Okay, not a problem. Go ahead, do all the research. Highly recommend Retro RGB's channel for this. He does a lot of great side-by-sides and everything. Find some alternatives to the PSU, and Bob is really good about just, giving you an objective answer. But then, I'm thinking, okay, cool, I think I have my option. And then he ends it with, and this isn't a fault on him, it's actually a good PSA. He's like, but remember, if you're replacing the power supply, you're not using the official product, you're using somebody's interpretation. I was like, like, I'm gonna fucking break the system, I just know it. So I find one option, and I'm really excited about it. Look up some reviews, go to Voltar. Voltar seems to say it's okay. Voltar doesn't like much, but he seems to think it's okay. So I'm like, okay, I'll go with this option. Go to one website, sold out, go to another website. Eventually I just bought it directly from the dude who makes them off of eBay, and he shipped it, not priority, but it came really quick. I think he told me it would take 2 weeks. It came in like a week and a half. Installation's super simple. Install that, beautiful, good to go. The only catch to the whole thing is that I had to purchase a external power brick to go with it because it's small form factor. It doesn't have like the same amount of capacitor, so it needs some extra boost on the back end. So ultimately, I'm changing the plug-in as well, like for the outlet. Not a problem. He also makes a Dreamcast option. I'm like, cool, let me do the Dreamcast too, so this way I'm not switching cables and pulling stuff out. I'm literally just going back and forth, and that's it. Because I can only have either, the way my setup is set, I have an analog NT in there full time. I have a Wii U in there full time with the ability to play Wii and GameCube. I have a PS3 so I can play PS1. I have a PS2 plugged in. I have a Switch. I have a PS4. I'm sorry, a PS5 and an Xbox One S. And then the optional ones are I can have a Mega SG, a Saturn, or a Dreamcast plugged in immediately. N64, because that's honestly my least favorite of all the consoles. That takes a little bit of rigmarole because I actually have to play around a little bit with the hookups on that, but everything is connected via USB, or at least using an upscaler of sorts. So, with that being said, I'd figure let me change the plug so that the Dreamcast, we can continue with this plug and play method that I have going on here. And let's just say the Dreamcast version is not as well received, and Voltar has mentioned that it just doesn't sync power correctly, and I'm like, okay, so fuck it. Some first world problem. We'll just roll with it. I don't care at this point. I'm not ripping shit apart again for another 12 days. So that's all good to go, but that's also where I get like the idea for playing Shining Force or something along those lines. Because I just spent all this fucking time getting it up and running again. I feel like I should use it. But then here comes the other part of the wackiness that happened this month too. We finally found out that the Switch Pro is really just an OLED, and there's no additional power whatsoever. OLED is beautiful. If you don't have a Switch array, this makes total sense. If you're like me who has a Switch Lite and really just has that purely for the commuting aspect, which doesn't exist yet, but may soon, because of the small form factor and the extra battery life, this really has no purpose for me. My standard Switch is full-timed in the television, unless, listen to me, I'm old, is full-time on the TV, unless, the fiance wants to watch something, then I pop it out. But that's pretty much it. It doesn't leave the house at this point. And it's not even my primary console, so anything that's digital is just not going to play because it's not on the go. It's not meant for that. So an OLED for me is kind of pointless. Would it be nice? Yeah, but it would be more of a luxury purchase. If this had some extra juice to it, that's a different conversation. The VNs can stay on the small form one, and then everything else can go on this newer one. Very much a missed opportunity for Nintendo. Especially with all this leaking stuff. It's kind of unrelated, but I feel like if they were able to come out with a Pro, that would just be like, oh yeah, we were talking about, but I don't think they actually found these specs. The OLED, they found out Nintendo bought 1 million, I'm exaggerating, 1 million OLED screens. So of course they're going to use them for something eventually, right? But at this point, I think maybe they're just like, yo, you got a bunch of OLEDs chilling in the warehouse. You want to just throw them on a few switches and see what happens? It's basically like the GBA equivalent of an IPS swap. Matter of fact, I'm surprised nobody's tried it themselves yet. Anyway. So, missed opportunity on Nintendo's part, at which point Gabe Newell and the guys at Valve decided to do their own Steam Deck. And this thing very much looks like a Switch. It seems to not play like a Switch, but it has more oomph and power than a Switch. It's basically a more portable PC. It's a laptop. It's a small form laptop, essentially, or a handheld laptop. You know, the idea of the Palm Pilot, and only bigger and better, and with 60 FPS presumably. So they were doing a very interesting way of pre-ordering this. I threw in for the stupid version because I'd rather future protect myself, and I wasn't really thinking about going in on it, but it's $5 down and it's totally refundable. So I was like, okay, let's see. I'm not getting mine till Q2 of next year anyway, so it's like whatever. But it really made it an interesting point. One of the things that I have had a lot of challenges with lately is playing PC games. Primarily because I sit on a laptop most of the day, and I've said this 1,000 times. I mean, hell, I even record on iPads and iPhones just for the purpose of not sitting in front of a fucking computer again. Although that will change, and I have something to talk about on that. If it's in a handheld format, I may be able to play it a bit more, especially knowing that some of the games I bought or played on Switch that were PC ports of like strategy games like Hard West and whatnot, the glaucoma filter is just too much. The games run like shit, to say the least. 30 FPS is a dream, not a target, and everybody's cool with it, apparently. I've seen so many Switch reviews where they're like, oh, look, the game looks really good. And I'm like, what the fuck are you looking at? Like, my vision is terrible, but my vision is good enough to know what looks like crap, all right? Or runs like shit. I'm not stupid. At least I think. But, you know, something with, like, a Steam Deck with the extra power and, like, looking at the specs, it's actually pretty good. But here's the thing. Holding this thing is going to be like, you may as well be holding fire literally in your hand. This thing's going to run stupid hot, I think. And even then, the battery life, to me, doesn't look all that fantastic. But I'm not necessarily sure if that's on minimum or, what's the word, high-end specs. As in, you know, tweaking shadows, resolution, all that stuff. For the most part, for me, there also is a deck to put on the TV. I haven't seen anything saying that the deck adds a little extra boost in RAM or anything, but I doubt it does. I think it's literally just... It's basically acting as a Steam... What the hell is that damn thing called? The cloud thing. The streaming thing they did. I forgot the name of it. Whatever. I'm imagining it's something like that, only hardlined. But, you know, for me, it's like... If it's something like, you know, like a Hard West or even like an XCOM, you know, it has a trackpad for mouse usage, touchscreen, all that fun stuff. It may make it a bit better. And then the Switch, particularly when it comes to games like that where they use the sticks as a mouse, I can tweak the sensitivity all day. It still never feels right. Maybe something like this will be better. But as I said, it was $5 down. No harm, no foul. It's like $700 after the fact, but we'll come to that when we come to it. Plus, you have access to all your Steam stuff. I have a bunch of stuff on GOG, but they said they don't really care what else you use on it, so that's great. And if you can get Game Pass on it, then... I bought an Xbox Series S for no reason. I think. You know, you obviously can't tell until you see this stuff in action, but it looks very promising. And I think truthfully, I think they probably had this kicking around for a while, and they were just waiting for the right opportunity. And then Nintendo announced their new model, and then somebody from higher up just said, listen, they flubbed it. Let's get these people who are hungry for a more powerful handheld. That's what I think, personally. And it worked. I mean, Steam knows how to make money. The only thing I am worried about, and a lot of people pointed out, much like Google, when something doesn't work, they kind of just do that. Like YouTube. So I wouldn't be surprised if this thing comes out of the gate screaming, and then after a few years it kind of trickles out. But even then, the people who use the Steam streaming service, if they didn't have access to Wi-Fi and all that stuff, they loved it. I had one for a bit myself because they were like clearancing them for like $5. And the short time I used it, it actually works really well. But then the technology outgrew it, so there was no purpose to me having it anymore. So I tossed it. But what was I going to mention that I thought was somewhat interesting? Let's see, Steam Deck games, all that fun stuff, Nintendo Switch. Oh yeah, so the camera stuff. I've actually been trying to, bear with me, up this production quality just a little bit. Only not for really for the sake of bells and whistles, just to make it a bit more convenient. I actually backed this all-in-one camera, microphone, um, I guess you could say streaming light thing. It's basically an all-in-one unit. It wasn't that expensive. It looked kind of promising. It was supposed to be here, presumably this month, but as Kickstarter do, remember it's not a store. It got delayed. Obviously, with the way the world is these days, anything that involves manufacturing gets delayed. So I'm not bent out of shape about it. I've just been, I want to play with it and figure it out. It has like a tripod and everything built into it. As opposed to me setting up a Yeti, and then, the lighting has always been a problem. And even when I did get a filming light, it's on a gorilla stand, and I really have nothing to attach it to. So I'm kind of jerry rigging it to a bunch of stuffed animals and the laptop screen, hoping if it falls on the stuffed animals and it just doesn't shatter into a million pieces. So hopefully that works. When that comes in, my intent is to start using that, and then just have it all set up through the laptop. So hopefully this looks a bit better. Also, again, against, I guess you could say, against my usual, I am doing a top 25 list. I've been working on it for maybe about 2 weeks now. Just with work, I haven't been able to do it. I already picked out the games. That took a while. Trying to do a little bit more of a creative spin on it. What is that going to look like? I have no idea yet. I just don't want to stand here and go, number 25 is this, number 24 is that, number 23, hey, 23. It's just, anybody can do that. And anybody can make a little bit of a fun video, but the rub of the whole thing is I'm actually against doing top lists myself. I was kind of peer pressured into doing it. The reason is because my list tends to change, and on this channel I really mentioned all my favorite games so many times. Final Fantasy 2 is number one, and for this list Final Fantasy 2 is not number one actually, and that's because I had to change the criteria for what is going into this 25, so that there would at least be some surprises in it, hey, people are like, oh no, nobody's gonna hold it to you. I'm like, yeah, so what am I gonna do? The Monday top 25, the Tuesday top 25. Oh, Wednesday something changed. Guess what? Thursday update. Number 5 is now. It's just it it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, but going through like the list of RPGs, it is of RPGs actually. One of the criteria is I was like, okay, I gotta strike VNs, because otherwise, at least VNs with no gameplay, because otherwise the top 10 are just gonna be visual novel, and I have to strike like all these, I guess you could say, RPG mechanic-y games, because otherwise they're gonna show up in there too. So I think I got it to a list I really like. Started to do some of the fun stuff in the background, and when it's done, it's done. I'm not going to say it's going to come out next week, because with the way work is, and I actually have a full week of training coming up in August. I wanted to get this out before the end of this month, but then all this stuff happened, so I wouldn't be surprised if this video doesn't come out until August, if not September. Hell, if something changes, I already got the template set, so I can just rotate the games around. I was also debating on just doing the individual segments, like just for the sake of getting them out, just recording them, like one game at a time. And if I decide to overlay images and gameplay, which, I just kill my video. I also have a Genki. I forgot to mention that, for the purpose of using that as a quasi capture card for PS4, Switch, and PS5 gameplay. Haven't used it yet. It's installed and everything, but again, it's been so wacky. I just don't have the time or the patience to troubleshoot everything. Plus, life has just been nuts. But I think that's really going to do it for this recap. I think Pick a Video is up already. We talked about Cold Steel. That has a video, and yeah, I really did enjoy just going through this beeline. But something else I want to do And I mentioned this to a few people. I want to find a game where everybody plays it, and then we kind of just like play it together, as it were. You know, a single player affair, but you know, we all play it at our own pace, and when we finish it, we all just get together and discuss it. I've always found podcasts that do that very interesting, because not everybody has the same interpretation. Not everybody has the same excitement. I mean, you know, I remember years ago. I did one with Accent on Gamers, Devil May Pie, and Aerodynamics. Like, we're going way back. And we were talking about Persona Q, and I honestly, I don't remember the full context of it, but we went on this whole rant about Donald from Fire Emblem Awakening for like half an hour. And how it's like he's such a dumbass character, but he turns out to be one of the best. I don't even remember how it happened, but it was just, I think Aerodynamics said something or I said something and then just spiraled out of control. And then we're like, okay, let's bring it back to the game. And then it just never happened. I always find those fun because it's totally organic and you can really tell when somebody is either, you know, just being really super critical, or they're being super critical and somebody's telling you, well, actually, if you think of it this way, you hear their opinion change. I think it's a good, like, almost like a panel debatey sort of thing. If everybody loves it, then everybody loves it. But anyway, I think that's going to do it for this one. This is running a lot longer than I thought. I've been Alex, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.